What can we do to increase our chances of being heard and having an impact? I have 2 suggestions. One, to be inclusive, not just talk about it. And second, to own your boldness. If we as women think it's important, inclusion is important, are we deliberate enough about that ourselves? In other words, are we really walking the talk? And if not, what can we do? So here's a few ideas, and I'm sure you can generate a lot more. First of all, I think we do need to recognize that there is a need to include more women, especially at leadership levels. Second, if we want to be more inclusive, we have to look for systemic barriers. What gets in the way of people participating? In the Ontario government, we have something called a diversity lens. It's to make sure we're thinking about diversity when we're designing policies or programs. And it identifies 14 different categories of ways that you can inadvertently make it difficult for different people to contribute. Things like attitudinal barriers, like assuming it's always the woman who's going to leave the room and make the coffee. We need to look at our own way of thinking. We are all biased. Sometimes it's really obvious, like when you go to the doctor or the dentist and the man and the woman walk in and they're in their uniforms and you automatically assume that the male is the doctor and the female is the assistant. Sometimes they're not so obvious, like the short list of names we think about for our children, or when we spend more time talking to the person beside the wheelchair than the person sitting in the wheelchair. We understand now that our biases are deeply ingrained. They're actually part of our belief system, and whether we like it or not, they are how we make sense of a very complicated world. And if we want to change what we believe, we have to change what we experience. We have to be exposed to different ideas and different situations where we can really learn and grow. How about asking a male leader to mentor you? This may be strange, but if you think about it just a minute, especially in large organizations, if you're in a position of power, taking an interest in anybody in the opposite sex can be really tricky. If you add onto that an unrecognized bias against women, it's really easy to see why some male leaders just instinctively go and mentor those male colleagues. So give them a chance. Ask whether they'll spend some time. Ask whether they'll mentor you. And while that leader is helping you, he'll be seeing himself what bright women can bring to the table. So we can ask others to be more inclusive, or we can lead the way. And I suspect it would be probably more effective if we did both. The second thing we can do to increase our chances of having our impact is to recognize our boldness. This idea came from the Harvard Business Review blog, arguing that women are bolder than men. Based on a review of the assessments of 75,000 leaders from around the world, women were more likely than men to challenge the status quo, to get others to reach higher than they thought possible, to recognize the need for change, and to actually make that change. Quite simply, women are bolder. On a personal level, maybe being bolder is about building a different network, one that's carefully chosen to include people inside your community and outside of it, those that will support you and those that will challenge you just a little bit. I've always instinctively known that if I only talk to people who get agriculture, that I'm probably missing an opportunity and really has got a narrow perspective. And some of you said, I'd love to be involved at the leadership level, but I really don't know what steps to take. Well, it is about knowing yourself, what you do well and what you don't, because we all have things that we don't do well. It's about understanding that. It's about volunteering. It's about building and using your network. And getting to the table is about helping others get there as well, because you won't be a leader if you haven't been a follower. Which leads to my last thought. Maybe being bolder is standing up for the not so bold, for the enablers, for the silent partners, and honoring and championing the kind of work that women have done so well in the past and are going to continue to do in the future. Women have always been the backbone of agriculture. They started by raising the next generation of farmers and managing the household. Many of them continue to coordinate the family life, and they absolutely do the running. And boy, oh boy, is that an invaluable service that people don't appreciate in terms of keeping a busy business going, having someone to look after the small details. Leaders need partners, enablers, they need followers. The best ones are committed and competent. They're perfectly willing to let someone else be in the limelight because they know it takes a team. But they are also thinkers and they are courageous, and they won't hesitate to talk to the leader if they feel that that leader is taking them off track. So in other words, the silent partners, the followers, are also leaders in their own low-profile way. But do we celebrate that enough? Are we bold enough to talk about how important that really is? Are we clear that when we talk about opening new doors, it doesn't mean that everyone has to step through them? Because if we're not, who is? So, just to close, as you learn and you grow over the next couple of days, I hope you'll give a little thought to my question about the female vision. I think we do have one. It recognizes the economic punch of the food and agriculture system, but it gives equal weighting to its impacts on our community and our society. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening.